This is a setup, man. Come on. Welcome to the Mouthpiece, Year 1, Episode 14. Today, we're going to talk about my Poker After Dark experience last week, along with my upcoming Poker After Dark next week. We're also going to have an amazing interview with Shaun Deeb. That's right, we're going to talk about his World Series of Poker, how he's chasing an unprecedented second consecutive WSOP Player of the Year, along with your phone calls and lots more here on the Mouthpiece. Okay, welcome to the Mouthpiece. Interesting week. Last Monday, Tuesday, I played Poker After Dark. I thought I played A+. If any of you out there didn't see last week's episode, it was called the WSOP Hangover episode on Poker Go. I really liked the way I played. I got really unlucky early, got stuck. I lost an 11,000 chip pot. I got all in pre-flop with queens versus ace-queen of the gentleman that won the main event, Enson. We'll just call him I think it's Hussein Enson or Hussein. I don't want to get his first name wrong, but I know his last name is Enson. And a very nice man from Germany, super nice man.
Really quick, I'll fix that totally in the editing. Just say Mr. Enson.
Mr. Enson.
Just say it once clean and I can throw it.
Okay. So I lost an 11K pot to Mr. Enson. And then I also got myself down a little bit in a interesting hand where Daniel went crazy on Twitter that it was the worst fold ever and blah, 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 blah. But to me, it was one of my best folds ever, where the dynamic came up where Brandon Cantu's like raising every hand like normal, and Dario is 3-betting him, and if Dario's not 3-betting him, Matt Berkey was 3-betting him. So he gets 3-bet for about the 20th time, and I had ace queen in the big blind and decided to 4-bet this hand because of the dynamic of the Brandon Cantu raising my blind, which he does 99% of the time, and then the re-raise that they've done on Brandon every time. And then I 4-bet it to 2,600. My image was extremely good at the table, very tight. And Cantu folded. And then Dario 5-bets me all in. I have 3,100 left. Now, when Dario knows when I 4-bet it, and I asked him straight out when I 4-bet it, and he 5-bet me all in. I go, Dario, what do you think I have here? And he looks me dead in the eye with a smile and says, ace queen minimum, and then kind of smirked and smiled at me. And when he says that, that's basically telling me that he has ace, king, aces, or kings. I mean, there was not a doubt in my mind that he had ace, king, aces, or kings. Now, Daniel was trying to tell me, oh, he'd have done the same thing with tens or jacks. I go, no, he wouldn't have. And as a live player, there's not a doubt in my mind when Dario had 1,000 invested in the pot that he's never 5-bet shipping tens or jacks against my range and my my table presence. So I knew it was ace, king, aces, or kings. So I folded it when he looked me in the eye and said that, and then he showed me ace, king. Now, granted, was I getting almost 3-1 to call? Yes. So there's 2,600 plus 2,600 is 5,200 plus Brandon's 300 is 5,500 plus the ante and the small blind is $5,375. Now, if when he puts me all in, that's another 3,000. So there's not, you got to count his money in the pot. So there's 8,400 in the pot. I have to put 3,000 in now to win 8,400, which is not quite 3-1 on my money. Okay, if it was 3,100 to win 9,300, exactly 3-1, I still would have folded. Okay, now people say, "Well, how you do it? You're getting the exact correct math." Well, the bottom line is what if he has aces? It's one of the three. Now I'm a lot more than 3-1 dog, and I know it was one of the three. And I could find a better spot. I could fold there and find a better spot, which I end up doing. I end up folding, and I was really focused. So for me to make that fold told me that I'm very focused. And like I said, Dario showed me ace, king, and even if he showed me ace, king, it was still 3,100 to get back to win 8,400. So it wasn't 3-1 on the money, as much as Daniel was texting that I was 28% in the hand, and I wasn't. So with that in mind, I folded, and then I kept the 3,100 on the table. I bought 5,000 more, and then got 7,300 in on a flop of deuce 6-8 with 2 clubs, with king 10 of clubs against Mr. Enson's 7-9 of clubs. Now this is a really good spot to get my money in, because now he's got 3 straight cards on each side, which is 6. A 7 or 9, which is 6 more. So he had 12 outs and twice, which puts me approximately about 62%, I think. But if it might even be more, I really never ran the hand. But that's a great spot to get my money in. And, of course, if a king or a club rolls off, he's dead. So we ran it twice, club the first time, and then the second time the board paired bottom pair, and I was joking around saying, like, pair the board again. Let me win the second one with a king high. But I ended up hitting a king on the end, and I scooped the pot. It was like a 14,000 chip pot. Now, I got my money in an amazing spot, which made me feel really good. And I ended up grinding out and breaking dead even for session 1. In case anybody missed it, you can go and check it out over on Poker Go.
The Mouthpiece.
If you'd like to take part in our phone call segment, you can give us a call at 702-329-0480. And if you're a snowflake or a pussy and you don't want to talk to me, you can email me at mouthpiecepodcast@gmail.com. Also, follow me at the Mouth Matiso on Twitter for times that our call-in segment will be live. Okay, it's our favorite time of the show, our phone call segment. So call on in and light up the line. Welcome to the Mouthpiece. This is Mike.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good, man. Who's this?
This is Donnie.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not much. I was wondering, are you going to be going to Barcelona
I will not.
for the EPT?
I will not be going to Barcelona.
You don't usually play in the EPTs. Why not?
I've only played one. The main reason why I'm not going is I've got a pretty full schedule on my slate for the next month. I'm playing 2 Poker After Darks next week, and then I'm going to playing a higher limit Poker After Dark on the 21st, I think it is. And then I'm going with Helmuth down to L.A., and we're playing live at the Bike, a couple live games, and then the Legends of Poker over at the Bicycle Club. And,
Nice. So you got a full schedule.
yeah, and then depending when Jewish holidays come up, I'm trying to get myself where I can get to the World Series of Poker Europe, but I have to check that out. I'm not quite sure yet.
Okay, nice. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, buddy.
You're welcome, man. I appreciate the call, and keep listening to our podcast. Take care.
I will. All right,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye.
Welcome to the Mouthpiece. This is Mike.
Hey, what's up, Mikey?
Who's this?
Hey, my name's Dan. Hey, I got a question for you.
Sure.
I know a lot of these big-time TV tournaments and stuff have people backing people, and you never know from the public who's got a piece of who, especially in these higher buy-in events. What would you think about some of that being like public knowledge during some of these televised tournaments to give a little bit more to the people who are watching that stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a fucking sham, so if that's what you want to know. I think the whole high roller scene's a sham. I think over probably 70% of the people are being staked and playing for 5%, 10% or less. So, yeah, I think it's a sham. Now, the $1 million buy-in that what they just had, most of the people that played sold 75% of themselves out because nobody's putting up $1 million. I don't care.
Right.
They're just not. Maybe Vivek might have put up his own money.
You think like the casual fan, like not no one who's like a poker player, just like the casual follower, do you think that those people have no idea that people don't even put up their own money? Do you think they just assume it? Or
the truth of the matter is the poker economy isn't what it once was, and right now a lot of players are selling pieces of themselves on stakings or UStake or whatever staking site out there is, and it was pretty well known for the Million event that most of the top pros that played in it sold a lot of pieces of themselves on some staking sites. So do I think that it should be public knowledge of how much they were actually playing for? I think in a tournament that's an invite only, that only has a certain amount of players, I think if it's going to be out there and spread of this greatest poker tournament ever, I think people should know if the winner had 10% of himself or he had 50% of himself. Or, I mean, I can't see Bren Kenny having more than, and he's got money, but he's smart guy and one of the best players in the world. I do not see him putting up more than 200,000 of himself. Right. I would say
I just always wonder, like if it gets down to the final table or the final so many, and who has pieces of who, and if there's colluding that kind of goes.
That's the thing about these high rollers. Most of the people, and it's pretty well known in the poker world, and I call it out all the time. Let's see, they had 27 supposedly businessmen, 27 pros or whatever. I would probably, and I don't want to, this is speculative. This is not a definite answer, but out of the 27 pros, I would say 23 of them swapped huge percentages. So if one of the businessmen, and it's basically they swap and they all get pieces, and as long as certain businessmen don't win, they kind of chop up the money. Now they don't cheat, they play their hardest and they play to win, and but there's no collusion or anything, but yeah, they all have pieces of each other. That I know for a fact. You know,
you think that's good for poker in the long run, or you think it's going to hurt it? That's really all you hear about now.
I think it's horrible. I think it's horrible because I think it's fake and phony. So I don't like things that are fake and phony. Now, as far as people selling pieces of themselves, that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of people do that. I don't like when I hear, well, I only had this much percent of myself because I swapped 52% with different people. Like that, I see that all the time, and I don't know the exact figures, but I just don't like the phoniness of, let's just say whoever wins, and let's just say they won $19 million. I don't want people saying, oh yeah, I won $19 million. I would like people to say, well, it was a big buy-in tournament and I only maybe had 20% of myself. But I don't think it's fair or right for the public to think, oh my God, this guy just won $19 million. Kind of like when Antonio won the first million for $18 million, and he got on the Howard Stern show, and then Howard Stern asked him, how much did he have of himself? And he played it off like he had all of himself, when the whole poker world knows that he had between 10 and 15% of himself. And I just hate phoniness. Just say, hey, it's a big buy-in tournament. I had a lot of people put up big pieces for me because I'm a great player. They believe in me, and I had 15% or I had 20%. You think anybody's going to think less that they won $3.8 million or whatever it is?
Right.
Yeah, that's a big problem that I have with it, and I call it out all the time, and I get a lot of shit for it. But I don't want to see phoniness. I don't like the public being deceived, so I call it out.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate the insight, Mike. You hang in there, but I follow you for a long time. Big fan, and glad to see you play some good poker this summer. So
I appreciate
congrats
it, man.
on your series.
Thank you. Take care, man. Thanks for the call.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
The Mouthpiece.
This is two-time WPT champion Jonathan Little, and you are listening to The Mouthpiece.
This week's episode 14, we're going to talk to my friend, Mr. Shaun Deeb. Mr. Shaun Deeb, are you there?
Yes, Mikey, I'm
hey,
here.
Buddy. How's it going, man?
Good, just recouping from the World Series grind, adjusting back to dad life, and, getting back on the schedule that the kids are on, which is quite different than the World Series schedule.
The schedule the kids are on is what, 6:30 a.m.?
No, they're like 7:30, but the problem is neither of my kids like waking up in the morning. Neither do I. Neither is my wife. So it's kind of four people all trying to cumulatively get each other awake. Get them dressed, get them fed, get them in the car to go to school or daycare, whatever they're going in for the day.
Right.
So, and then sometimes Ashley takes the kids, and I get to go back to sleep. Those are the days I really enjoy.
Yeah, I bet, So that's good, So you, for a lot of people that don't know you, they all, everybody likes to say shit about you and talk shit. And, well, like, you're a self-admitted, I'm an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, I don't try to pretend to be nice to everybody. I don't try to pretend not to offend people, I say what's on my mind. I have from day one in poker, the online days made it a lot easier to talk shit.
Right.
And, I come from a family of New Yorkers who always shit talk and always needle. And, it was what I was raised in. And I found mixed games, which I fit in perfectly with that crowd. And that's always been me.
Yeah. That's, see, and that's good. So I was talking to the great one himself, Mr. Helmuth, yesterday. And we talked about you, and he gives you, he has a lot of respect for you too, which is a lot, coming from Phil, because he thinks everyone's an idiot and he's the greatest, as you know. And so we had a lot of fun with it, and we're talking. What's the best way to describe this? I like to tell people all the time, and people I don't give a fuck what they say. Is you could think Shaun Deeb's an asshole all you want, but you gotta respect his poker. And everybody I say that even think you're an asshole, they say the same thing. And one of my questions to you is, how did you get so good at all the games? Did you just find yourself putting a lot of hours in online learning them, or has it just come natural to you?
I was a big volume guy in the online days, and it was all trial and error for me. Mm-hmm. And, when I first got into the 8 game on Stars, I said to myself, who do I think is the best Raz player?
Right.
So I would pay attention. I think CG was one of the best stud players, the 1-2 mixed game. Mm-hmm. So every time CG was in a pot, I'd focus on what his down cards was, how he played, what his timing was, and how he played versus each player.
Right.
So I did so much mimicking early on in my career of each player's best game that, it made me – I was very rarely the best player in any one of the 8 games in the mix, but I was very often the second best player. So in a 6-handed game, if you're the second best player in all 8 games, you're going to make a lot of money. And that's kind of what I figured out. And, a lot of people played really bad versus me. They had bad ideas of how I played, and they thought I was too loose, thought I never folded. So, I'd start folding to them, and I kept adjusting quicker than they were adjusting to me.
Got you, which, makes a lot of sense. And when I first met you, you were playing mixed games, but you were also known in the online world more of a top no-limit Hold'em player. Where do you feel that no-limit Hold'em fits into your repertoire of different poker games? I mean, do you still believe that is your best game, or do you believe there's other games that are your best game?
I think it's one of my best games versus bad. Sorry, I think it's one of my best games versus bad players, but
right.
versus great players, I'm awful. I mean, they put so much time into studying the game. Their sizings, their frequency, their ranges are so much more constricted, or so much more better, consistent, and they're just I can't beat them. Right. I overbluff them or underbluff them, and I just always call them down, and I just get owned by, overbets and different things. So right. I feel like I'm being exploited a lot by them. Mm-hmm. And so, I just pick my spots. When I'm at a tough no-limit table, I'm just going to play, loose pre-flop but tighter post-flop, and kind of go from there. I still try to steal a lot of blinds. I mean, you have to be aggressive. That's why you see me at the World Series. I'm off in the chip leader of any tournament I'm in.
Right.
Because I'm going balls to the wall, and if there's a player better than me, I'm going to take a slightly minus EV spot to knock them out and get a fish there.
Right.
I have these ideas of equity per orbit, or what your win rate is. And if there's someone winning a lot of pots and, taking chips from everyone else, those are chips I'm not getting.
Right.
So I definitely battle with the other most aggressive player very frequently in a spot where I will gamble with them and get it in light to knock them out or knock myself out or, get a much better table.
Interesting. Now, I have that same theory, but I have a different way of going about it, which is, one thing I always talk to you about is I play short stack great, and when I go to collect chips, I sometimes struggle to collect chips. Now, for some reason, I don't know why, but people think you're like some loose maniac, and you're 100% opposite of that. I mean,
there's tendencies. The games you play more of the higher buy-ins, limit games where you kind of can't get out of line because limit. You can't really bluff as much. We haven't played much no limit.
Right.
I'm definitely a maniac. I definitely 3-bet and 4-bet more than almost anyone. I definitely shove my stack in there way lighter than everyone else. But everyone folds right now to all in. So, while it's still working, I'm going to keep doing it.
I agree with you. And I was talking with somebody the other day, and I said to them, I'm like, well, I don't 3 and 4-bet that often, but I do a lot more. And a certain person said to me, oh, you shouldn't be four betting light in this day and age. He goes, all those guys went broke. I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, if you see certain spots where there's situations coming up and you're like 100% sure they're at least 95% that they're going to fold if you four bet, if you sense weakness, I think you're supposed to go for it. So I'm sure that's your opinion on things too, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people 3-bet expecting to get a call or a fold because everyone's calling their whole range in that spot.
Right.
So by 4-betting, you throw them for a loop, and they're not as comfortable in 4-bet pots and to different sizings as they used to be.
Correct.
Because it happens so much less frequently.
And
so, I've lived in a day of 4-betting all the time, so I'm very comfortable with those stacked pots and, with being lighter and bluffing and just repping a lot stronger than I have and go from there.
Now, do people, because of who you are, like I'll give you an opinion, like when back in the day when I first met you and I was coming up, or you were coming up, and I was more of an established pro, before I had switched gears, but in 2000, up until 2006, we'll say, I was considered like the most aggressive no-limit player in the world. Can you believe that? So I had to change my my way of thinking because people were just consistently calling me down. You know what I'm saying? And so then I kind of got real nitty for a long time. And then all of a sudden my image became more of Mike's and it. And then I started exploiting it. So when I first met you, I remember how super aggro you were. Do you consider yourself that you had slowed down from that a lot, or do you, against bad players, you just stay aggressive? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if people don't know how to play against pure aggression, you can just keep applying pressure.
Right.
My opening range is wider than almost anyone that I know.
Right.
People laugh at when they see some of the hands I open. I'm like, well, if no one's 3-betting me and the big one's going to call and play weak tight post swap with a super wide range and not get a showdown, great. I'm going to keep printing money,
Right.
And I have those goofy hands and I get paid off in some really big pots where people never think I could have, the Jack 7 suited or the 8-9 off. They're not adding those combinations in my range.
Right.
And every time I see, some people play out some softer tables, I'm like watching them open fold hands that I am so happy to open with, and I just watch how everyone keeps folding when they open a decent hand. It's like, so how often does your hand matter? If you're not getting the showdown, if the table's getting a showdown one every 50 hands, why does it matter what two cards you have?
See, that's a good point. Now, I was talking about that yesterday. I brought up almost that exact point about like me in the main event. I played 5 days, and I won 5 hands at showdown, and people are like, you made it almost to day 6 and only won 5 hands at showdown? And I said, yeah. And so that's how you know you're playing well. That's a good sign. Now, granted, the 5 hands I won were really big pots. I picked up aces against kings to double on day 1. On day 2, I picked up 8s, flopped a set of 8s against aces for a big double, and then had my real biggest double was, and it's pretty funny. It's kind of like what you're talking about. I kind of waited for, how the good players are always, looking to find spots and looking for weakness on certain players. And but one of the things that you do, I think, much better, and something I need to work on, it's also because you play a lot more poker, is you look for, when you're in a no-limit game, I mean, I think you're somewhat think like I do. You sit there for the first 15, 20 minutes. You kind of figure out how everybody plays, who's aggressive, who's tight, and then you kind of use that to exploit it a little bit. And so I kind of do the same. It takes me a little bit longer maybe to open up a little bit more, and it's something I'm really, really working on. And as far as now, I have this image, Mike's at my table. He's tight. We don't need to worry about him. And, and then I'll let him like raise my blinds, take it, and give off the image that you can steal from me, and then the next level goes up, and I'll switch gears, and that's how I'm able to get as far as I've been getting. Now, I shouldn't be telling all this on radio, because but I've talked to you about this, and you've even told me many times, Mike, use your image, and I've really been using my image a lot, and it's something. I feel comfortable now of pulling triggers and even post flop in spots where they're like, oh, Mike has to have it. It's Mike. You know what I mean? And it's helped me really do well in the no limit areas. I was telling people. So I respect you. I believe no matter what, you could be an asshole to everybody. You've always treated me with respect. People will be like, oh, well, he's slow roll you. That time I'm like, listen, Shaun apologized to me more times than maybe everybody in the whole world combined until I had to finally tell him, Shaun, it's okay. You don't have to apologize anymore for the slow roll. Because people, you like to fuck with people, like to needle people. But, me, and I've said this, me and you are friends, and when you slow rolled me on Poker Night in America, people were like, Shaun's an asshole. I go, no. I'm like, listen, me and Shaun, he knew that you could slow roll anybody but me, and he just had a brain fart and forgot that. And he came up to me so many times. I know, Mike, I would never do that to you. And I'm just like, I know you were sincere about it. A lot of things you fuck with people and you fucking say, you tell it like it is. You're somewhat like me, but you're kind of an asshole sometimes, and you don't mind being an asshole. Me, I'm the opposite. I like, I try and be an asshole jokingly, but overall, I'm, me. I'm nice to everybody, and but that's okay, I guess. It's what you like to do, and it gets. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of times you're out of line, and I'll call you out on it. I'll say, okay, Shaun, you were wrong on this, and we might argue about it, but overall,
we can debate, and that's what most people don't realize is I can have a constructive conversation with people, and people, my close friends this summer, said a lot of things that were out of line, and I explained the background, the stuff they didn't know, and they go, yeah, that makes sense why you'd feel that way. You still shouldn't have said it publicly, but I get where you're coming from. You're always being attacked and this stuff. You have to defend yourself. And, some people think they can shoot whatever shot they can at people. But you say anything towards them, they're so thin-skinned.
Yeah, no accountability.
People can say shit about me, and I don't hold – anyone insults me or calls me out or says it. I have nothing negative about anyone for what they say about me on subjects. I don't – just because you disagree with me doesn't mean I hate you.
Right.
And there's so many people in our culture and in poker and in life that are just if you disagree with me on this key subject, whether it's politics – or markup or something in life, or family stuff, you immediately think you can't be friends with them. Right. I am friends with so many people who disagree with me on key subjects because I look past that and I say, that's what we get along 80-90% of the time about every other subject. You can't agree. If you just surround yourself with people all those same thoughts as you, you're never going to grow as a person and get better at life and succeed, because you have to take advice. Even people that I completely disagree with, I still analyze and listen to their thoughts and reasoning and debate. Well, maybe I'll pull myself a little bit that way because I like this point they make. I'm willing to adjust, what I say and what I think based on everyone's opinion, which most people I think are so steadfast that they're so I'm going to go with X, and I don't care that you disagree with X for any reason whatsoever because this is my conclusion. I'm sticking to it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you know what? What you just said is pure what's wrong with this country and this world. And it's like groupthink. And it's, a lot of that goes on in the poker world. Groupthink, where, hey, this is the right way to play. If you don't play like this, you don't know how to play, and you better learn how to play like this. And I'm just like, what the fuck do you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages in poker to being the contrarian person. And, that's something I've done, and why I've had success against so many people. It's I'm willing to take lines on it. I don't give a shit if people are like, oh, he spewed it off, he bluffed it off. Can't believe he got in that many blinds with that hand. I said, okay, Like,
Right.
you guys disagree with me, but year after year I keep making money, so I'm doing
Correct.
something right. So even if I have some leaks, I'm still profitable, and
Right.
until I'm not profitable, I'll keep doing it.
Okay, no, with that, spinning over to that subject kind of when people like to say, how'd you do this or how'd you do that? Now, well, let's go back to very disappointing. I don't want to bring bad memories for you. A very disappointing tournament for you, which I thought for sure you were going to win, and somehow you let Mr. Friedman beat you, and you got. And if anybody out there doesn't know what happened, Shaun was head up with Adam Friedman, and for the Dealer's Choice title, and I know Shaun wanted that. People don't realize that's a pretty big title to have, that tournament in the poker circles, because it's you have to play everybody's best game when you're playing against them, and explain to the viewers how hard that really is.
Well, the hardest thing about that tournament is, like, when you're earlier in the tournament, when you're playing every six hands of each game, and every sixth game you get to choose. So the thing is, you choose a game, and so much changes in the next 30 hands when other people choose games. You might see a showdown, stack sizes change, a player busts out. It's the dynamics are so consistent. Everyone's like asking me, what game should I call? And I'm like, well, who's at your table? What is their stack size? Like, it's so complicated.
Right.
The thoughts, especially for someone like me, who I can call any game in the mix at any and be good at it.
Right.
So, like, I have more choices. Some people only play 2 or 3 games well. They get typecast. I'm going to keep calling this game. They're calling their best game, but
Right.
the key to that term is you have to call someone else's worst game.
Of course.
So you see so often you keep getting a game called until someone busts out, and then you figure out who's the worst player.
Right.
And that's such a tough tournament for that reason, because it's funny because sometimes the person who the game's being called for is calling the game themselves, and it's like, you still don't get it. That's why we're calling the game,
Right.
because you think you're good at this game, and you keep playing all these hands because you can outplay everybody, and this is a game where you can't outplay people.
Correct. And people are like, what game do you call, Mike? And I'm always saying, well, there is a few games that I believe that most of the poker world not only doesn't play well, but plays badly. And I find myself, I try and call that a lot in the Dealer's Choice, which is usually PLO 8 or better, or like even you might even agree with this, is high-low regular. I mean, it's a game that's never played anymore, but people they're just awful at it. What did you find? Did you find any certain games where, I know you're great at all the games. I mean, I tell people this all the time. You could say what you want about Shaun Deeb, but you got to respect his poker. He's great at all the games. I mean, I'm sure there's games you might be weaker at, but in a big mix you don't have to worry about. Is there a certain game when you're playing that you tell yourself in a Dealer's Choice type tournament that, hey, these guys are all bad at this game, I'm going to call this game? And probably also like stud high. I mean, I was shocked how great you play stud high when there's no stud high games to basically play. How did you become pretty good at stud high?
Just volume. I mean, I played.
Volume, yeah.
I used to play 6 to 10 tables of stars and full tilt 8 and 10 game. So I played more hands of every game, but I also at times would sit and play the best player heads up, was sitting at the tables, and battle with them heads up or 3-handed. So I played against the best players, at lower stakes. I would normally play live cash games,
right.
And I'd learned a lot from them. I figured, all right, these are the hands they wait to 4 street to raise. What is that reasoning? Oh, they're trying to get an extra small bet. They're trying to make the pot size bigger,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so good at figuring out people's tendencies. Like, this person raised folds on third a lot. So they're stealing, but they don't continue. This guy never raised folds on third. So, like, there's so many tendencies in stud that people are not paying attention at, where from my no limit background, I was never a HUD guy, but I still knew who folded the 3 bets, who folded continuation bets, and I used that knowledge in stud really well. And, stud with the ante structure, especially like 8-handed stud, you should be going crazy. And I just see so many people play so tight into, like, high cards, and they just never, ever play enough pots. They never ever, And because I play so many hands on third, I know that I'm going to get paid off on seventh a lot. So I, know when to give up. And it's just, the instincts in poker is you're like, this guy is just over and he's just going to call me down. Or this guy is going to believe me again. And, I just have, and I represent a lot of hands. And, you see so few people try to bluff in stud high. Like, I'm going to sit there and I catch 2 suit cards. All right, I'm going to rep, my flush draws. I'm going to do this. And, people believe that so much more than they used to.
Right.
And so that's where it's like, because they're just not comfortable in the game. And, I would never raise here without it. Oh, I only raise here with, 2 pair. Oh, I always raise fifth when I have buried aces,
Right.
They're so stuck in their ways, and I do a little bit of everything, so it allows me to bluff a lot more streets or to represent things that I don't necessarily have.
I think back at it when you bring that up. I think back at a certain hand. We were playing 400, 800 about 5 years ago. It was a stud 8 or better hand where I had raised, you called, you bricked, I had bet, you called, and now you bricked again, and I bet, and you raised me. And I don't know if you remember this hand. I was at the Aria, and you ended up...
Was this a super stud game?
Yeah, it was either super stud or 8 or a regular stud 8. And I'm like, wow, I'm like nobody does that. Nobody, you hit 2 bricks and then they raise you. And of course, I had one baby showing and then 1 brick. So even though, let's just say I was on 7 low draw or whatever, or you think I might have paired, when you raised me that hand, now all of a sudden threw me for a loop, and I'm like, well, what how can he raise in this spot? Well, he can't be bluffing, and I think maybe I had paired and 7, whatever. My board was maybe deuce 3, and then your board came in at 2 paints, and you raised me, and then the next thing you know, I end up folding on 6th, and you showed me some kind of bluff, and we kind of you laughed about it, and I'm like, I'll never forget this hand because I said to myself, damn, I'm like, nobody does that. I mean, just because stud 8 or better, it's very hard game to steal pots in. You have to literally find
it's really tough to steal when you have the worst board, and that's
right.
Those spots that I look for where I'm like, I can't continue by calling, so my only option to win the spot is by raising and representing this, which it's so credible. It's like, you know what I mean? You're sitting there saying you think there's 0% chance I'm bluffing,
right?
So, and you're also a good hand reader, so I can run those bluffs versus you,
right?
But a random idiot, I'm not going to try that versus.
Right. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And listen, I tell people all the time, I'm like, you don't try and bluff idiots. You could try and bluff good players. People who know what they're doing or know how to play, and you can use that in certain spots to exploit them. Just like I was kind of tell you, but about me being so tight and then using my image. Now, the one thing that you do better than me in limit tournaments is, and I have no problem saying it, is you are able to open ranges up a little bit more in limit tournaments than most people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I know that opening is profitable in all poker.
Right.
If you have initiative, if they have a capped range, you're going to win that pot more than them. So it's fine to inflate the pot because you're going to win it over half the time.
Right.
So even though it's heads up pot and you have way the worst hand, if they're going to fold on a later street enough of the time, it's okay.
Right.
And that's, what I do. And I always make sure I have the right stack size to, if I lose that pot, I'm not totally crippling myself, and that's something that I get is I know exactly how many hands I can play to showdown in my stack at all times. I'm like, I have 20 big bets. All right, I can play 4 hands, in this game. And I know that if I lose 2 of them and I get caught bluffing, I need to, lock it down and then adjust my ranges on that.
And, it's kind of like, exactly like what we were kind of talking about, going into where I'm going to go back to the hand in a few seconds about Adam Friedman. But even in the closer tournament where you finished the real disappointing 6th, people don't realize you, for all the viewers out there, you told me you were playing between 12 and 15 big blind stack for hours, and then you finally got a hold of some chips to get to the final table. A lot of people that think you're over aggressive, a maniac, play a lot of pots, they don't respect your short game, and a lot of times we haven't played that much, wasn't sure how good your short game was, and you said, Mikey, I grind with the best of them, and then we played together this summer in the '08, and I watched you play, and there were so many hands that we watched some of these people, quote unquote superstars. Oh, this guy's supposed to be a great player, and they'll play a hand. Hey, I have no problem. I think it was Robert Mizrachi hands, and me and you were shaking our heads.
There's at least 3 of them.
Yeah, and we were shaking our heads like, really? I remember he put some ridiculous beat on you with some hand that me or you couldn't even put $1 in with in '08 tournament. And so that's when I realized, Shaun Deeb plays '08 pretty good too. And coming from me saying that, I know that makes you feel good because, that's my best game. And the split games I've worked hard at to become really good at. And so me respecting you in '08 was a whole. I never thought you were a great '08 player. Then I saw you making some folds that I make and maybe you make in certain spots that other people don't. And you showed me. I was really impressed with that. But it was funny where we're able to look at each other in certain hands and just like, really. How the fuck can you get in there with that hand in this spot? And you call it out like it is, and it makes me laugh, and I have a lot of respect for you for that. Going back to the Adam Friedman hand, we're gonna talk about that because what we were talking about. You have all these big blinds. How did this happen? And what was for everybody out there that don't know? You can walk the viewers out of how the hand happened, what the thinking process was. We now know that it was a disaster and it didn't work out. And so many people in the poker world were like making fun of you and, oh, how could he do that or whatever. What was exactly your thought process? Was it a blow up? Was it a mistake? Was it just you went with something and it just was wrong? Try and explain to everybody.
So basically, we played 4 and 5 handed, we played 4 and 5 handed for like a couple hours that day, and 3 handed for like 3 hours with Matt Glantz being the short stack and me being the chip leader. Mm-hmm. And I think I got up to like 60 to 70% of chips in play, but Matt, had like maybe 5%, and Freeman had the rest. Mm-hmm. And me and Matt kept calling no limit, because that's the toughest game for Freeman to play pots with me with ICM. So I kept calling that game.
I agree.
And he was playing like very poorly. And he, just kept not folding to my 3-bets. Mm-hmm. And we played like 3 3-bet pots before that where, I started like in a single race spot where I just kept having really strong hands. Like I flopped 2 straights, and both times he ended up sucking out and making full houses. So Those were like 2 very big equity pots that if I win any one of those 3, that I would have, went on to win the tournament 95% of the time.
Right.
So, but the thing about those 3 hands is he flopped 2 pair, had aces on a board. And he just played them slow. Right. So he had played, even a couple of them were heads up. He played all these pots slow with flop 2 pair.
Right.
So, and he had to fold to a 3-bet of mine. So he's calling a lot of hands to a 3-bet. And I started sizing up my 3-bets, and I'd actually narrowed my range for like the last 30 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And he didn't realize that I had done that yet. So he opens for min raise, but we're playing with big blind ante. So with that, I'm getting 4-1 immediate. So I'm playing almost 100% of hands. Mm-hmm. So I 3-bet ace-jack off to I think like 8.5 big blinds, which is, a somewhat large 3-bet, but somewhat standard the way, the best snowball players play that deep, or 100 blinds deep.
Yeah,
and he flat, and I have ace-jack off, so the flop comes 8-7-4 rainbow. And I lead for like 3rd pot, my standard sizing, and he now raises me. And so because of every time we've played a pot so far where he's actually flopped good equity in a 3-bet pot, he thinks I just keep bluffing, so he just keeps calling. Mm-hmm. So as soon as he raised the flop, I convinced myself that, he didn't have anything.
Okay.
I thought, maybe a set, maybe 5-6, but that's about it, in the 8-7 suited.
Right.
And when the turn comes to 7, I check and he bets.
But the turn came a jack, made you a jack.
No, turn was a 7. No, river was a jack.
Oh, really?
Turn was a 7, and I check, and now he bets again. And now that 7's a pretty bad card for his range for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And also there was only one 8-7 suited combo left. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, there's one combo 7s, a couple combos of 8s, 4s, and a couple 5-6 suited, and that's it. So I think when he barrels that turn, I just know he's not raising an overpair there. I know he's not barreling there. So I think his most likely hand is going to be like ace-5, ace-6, or 9-10.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot more combos of those hands than, or just random gut shot hands. He could even have pocket 6s, pocket 5s. If I didn't think he would bet the turn with those hands, he might raise the flop. Mm-hmm. So when he bets the turn, his value hands are drastically going down while his bluff hands are staying at the same percentage. Mm-hmm. And he's been, I've folded to him a lot on the river so far because, I've just known he's had it. So I think, in my head, he's finally doing his bluff because I know he's had it every other time. Now he's taking this line that's different than all his value hands. Right. So when I actually call the turn, I river jack, I'm actually not excited about that card because now 9-10 gets there. Right. But, when I check and he shoves, I'm still getting, I think I was getting 5-1 at that point. So I'm I have to call because I have a pretty good hand. And he could have, jack 10 or jack 9, be value shoving. If he had a gut shot, make a jack. There's a couple other hands, the bluffs that I still think he might have. And so I call it, and, he has 7-8 offsuit. Now, I made a mistake not knowing he was calling that wide to that big of a 3-bet.
Right.
But I also don't think it's that bad. I think, it's one of those, he played the hand worse than me. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine. I'm fine here calling the turn heads up for 100K with ace high. I would just as happy to call on a deuce river. He shoves and I was going to call. That was my plan. I went with my, tendencies of how he's been playing. Mm-hmm. And, everyone can berate me for that, but sometimes you're right. And I don't mind to make a hero call for all the money, whether everyone thinks it's bad. I think, with the history we had and how I've been playing and my perceived range by him is that I think he never, ever would imagine I'd call him down with ace high there.
Right.
So if someone never thinks you're calling down with, a lot of your hands, you can call down with some goofy hands, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong.
Now, one of the critiques of the hand, and it was a critique that I brought up, and I didn't bring it up to you, but I brought it up to many other people because it was right after you had lost. I threw one needle in when you're in the mixed game tournament, but I'm not the type of person that when people. I love to needle people, but when people are really down, or something bad, I don't. It's just not the right time. What it is, but and I'm going to tell you what my thought process was after I read the hand, heard whatever is. When you look back at it, do you think to yourself, like you said, you picked No Limit Hold'em. I think that was the correct game to pick. Do you ever tell yourself, beside, the outcome, well, maybe I kind of overanalyzed this because Adam Friedman is never playing a big pot in No Limit versus you?
But he's kind of forced to play big pots in No Limit because he knows half the games called there can be no limit. I'd called No Limit for 10 to 15 rounds straight, and I was convinced. And Adam sits there and says, "Oh, I've gotten so much better at No Limit." He thinks he's better at that game than he is, and he thinks he can take advantage of his image in some spots in that game. Right. And he even told me throughout the summer, he's like, "Oh, I'm so much better at No Limit than everyone thinks I am," and I'm like, "You're not. It's funny. I'm glad you think that, but you're just." It's great because he's got that confidence.
No, it is
he's
good.
Better, and so people are like, oh, he's not going to play a big pot. I was like, he was willing to play a big pot, and he was willing to get out of line. Obviously, his pre-flop call shows that he thinks he can beat me in position, 100 blinds deep, calling 8.5 big blinds with 8-7 off. So if he thinks that that's a call, that's because he thinks he has a post-flop edge. He thinks he can use position well. If he's willing to call with hands like that, he's playing on bluffing for a lot of chips because a 3-bet pot, stacks are getting in a decent amount.
So you had 3-bet him to over 4x. Is that what you're saying? And he called with 7-8. And that makes sense. So it's I understand what you're thinking now. it's kind of weird that they had report. Oh yeah, they reported it right. 7 on the turn, Jack on the river. A lot of the critique you got was when you led the flop of the 7-8-4 got raised. Like you were just saying, you just told me your thought process. And of course, every railbird, they're not in the moment. So it's so easy to critique somebody from the rail and say, oh, did you see how bad Shaun Deeb played that last hand? What a joke. But listen, you went with your gut, and that's all that matters. The best players are born with a gut. They're born with an instinct. You have that instinct, and I have that instinct. And as long as you follow that instinct, you're more than happy. At least I am. And for a while, I would have the instinct, especially when I was sick for a while, of not following my instinct. And in my life in poker, as long as I follow my instinct, I was right, like at least 85.
But Mike, don't follow your instincts in sports.
No, yeah, of course not. Actually, the funny part is about sports is, and this is the truth. If I just pick 2 or 3 games a week and in certain spots, it's kind of like poker, and I would be great. But I'm such a degen that if I win, let's just say I pick 3 games, I go 3-0 that week. That would be the worst thing that ever happened to me, because instead of looking for situations and looking to at certain sports bets, I find myself betting the entire board. And so it's like an alcoholic taking its first drink. And unfortunately, it took me 7 years too late to realize that. I can't tell you how many times I said I could control it this time, I could control it this time, and I'd bet a dime a game, and of course then I'd win 10, 11, 12,000 a dime a game, and then the next thing you know, I'd take 1 or 2 bad beats, I go on tilt, I bet the whole board, and I'm broke again. So luckily for me, I've taken that out of my life, so that's really good. That's good to hear, about that hand. It's so funny. I said that I was going to be interviewing you today, and Adam Friedman texts me, and he says, hold on, give me my phone. I had to read this to you. Let's see. He says, this is pretty good. Ask Deeb what it was like, me kicking his ass head up. Does he think I'm even an average at poker? When am I going to be on your show?
Well, if Adam ever wants to run it back for $100K, we can play dealer's choice, same mix, whenever he wants.
There you go. There you go.
I'm willing to keep playing him until he shows me otherwise.
Yeah.
Like he is better than some people think he is.
He is.
But like most people in poker, he's nowhere near as good as he thinks he is.
Well, yes.
But that's probably true about me. That's probably true about you. I mean, we all think we're, one of the best ever. And there's probably some sicko young kids. There's some up-and-comers. Or people who just ran terrible that are better than us. It's just, there's crazy results in tournament poker. There's crazy results in cash games. And, other people have shit going on in their life that ends up making them go broke. So it's crazy because the public perception of the best players in poker is usually so far off of who actually is the best.
Oh, absolutely. And it's pretty funny. He's like, I'm glad you say. He goes, find out. He says, it's funny. I just want to think of if he thinks I suck, have skill or talent. And you just said people are he's a lot better than people think he is. And listen, it's fun needling Adam Friedman. Now, people out there in the poker world, if you're not in the poker world and you're just listening to my podcast, Adam Friedman is, they called him Mini Mike for a long time. Because
but you're not known for crying as much as him.
Yeah, he cries. He did, because I'm a little bit old. It's like I take bad beats now. I just say nice hand, It's because, but back in the day, in like 2006, 2005, people put a bad beat or paid bad against me. Everybody played bad then, so you could really, say whatever you wanted, and it didn't matter. The next bad player showed up. And now, a lot of people play good, so you have to respect their game. And that makes me, respect them a little bit more. And if I take a beat or I don't cry, but my God, you're right. Adam he just loves to cry. Mike, look, I have now had all these chips. Now I got this much. I got this. I go, Adam, it's poker. I don't want to hear, everybody get that. Nothing, I bet you're going to probably agree with me on this, is, Is there anything more tilting than when you go on a break and you have to hear somebody else's bad beat story?
It's pretty bad. That's why I usually stick to my few people I talk to on break, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, like with me having my scooter. I see somebody walk up to me, I go, "Oh God, here comes a bad beat story," and I'll be like, "Hey, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll talk to you in a minute." I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I mean, we all grind, we all do the same thing. I started off a lot of the intro to this podcast, and I talked to, and I stressed out a lot about how you helped me really end up having a really good World Series with like 3 events to go. I was really down, and you remember we had a talk, and you looked and you said to me, you said, "Mike, relax. You're playing good. That's all. I could see you're playing good. You're feeling good. The stud 8 betters left. The main events left. There's a bunch of other tournaments left. If you don't do well there," he goes, "relax." And you said that to me. And then the next day I got 4th in the stud 8, pretty disappointing. And I had a real deep run in the main event. And, I appreciate that, because hearing that from somebody I respect, and hearing somebody that is able to, to keep me calm, because, I'm very emotional. And when things start to unravel, you've seen me just unravel, and you were able to saying that to me, it kept me focused, and I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah,
and
I definitely see a lot of similarities to me, previous in my career, where I, would be so affected by that stuff, and you just have to realize it's a mental game.
Right.
And especially in the World Series, you have to show up to the next tournament playing your A game.
Right.
Like, people so often, you can just tell they just took a bad beat in their last tournament because they're just giving up, or they just don't care. There was I think 3 events this summer where I kind of was like, I don't really want to be here, and I definitely gave it away.
Right.
And obviously I played 80 events, 80 to 90 entries total. So it's okay to have a couple, blast offs in there.
Right.
But you have to be aware of that. And I know, I'm like, all right, I'm going to play really bad in this tournament, and then I'm going to take the night off and go relax, get a massage, and come back tomorrow back on my A game.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a good shot player of the year every year, because I can show up every day, ignore the previous days. Online grind helped me so much with that, and the volume I put in. That's why I think when it comes to volume at the World Series, I'm going to be one of the best horses when it comes to that, because I can sit there, play every game. I can wake up every day, and I can play 14, 16 hours for 2 months straight, like I did.
Right. And I asked you this also during the World Series, is how are you able to go from tournament to tournament to tournament to tournament when you're not that young anymore. What are you, 37, 36?
33.
Oh, you're still 30. Oh, you're still 33. Oh, so wow. When I met you, you were like 21 then, pretty much.
Yeah, I was a baby.
You was a baby. So a lot of things is, and I talked to Mr. Ensign that won the main event this year, and I told him, I said, your inspiration, you're 55 years old, you just grinded 8 days of this tournament, and you go up to him, and he's built like a truck. I mean, this guy works out 3 hours a day every day, and when you get up to in my age or his age to compete, I always felt you're going to have to get in a lot better shape, and we see you going from tournament to tournament, and you throw that right out the door, So
yeah, everyone it was funny because I think Joe Ingram had a great conversation with Poker Sasha, where they're like, you got to be doing keto, you have to be working out, you have to do this, you have to have balance, and they're like, to crush the World Series, and that's true for 99% of the people.
Right.
I think I'm the true outlier where I can be unhealthy, but I can be relaxed because my mind is strong, and I can sit there and be, just relaxed and not work stressed out. And I also save a lot of my energy for poker, because playing those hours is exhausting. I could not imagine going to the gym or doing all these things that people want to do during the day, because that's, a couple hours of extremely strenuous activity that is going to wear you down for the rest of the day.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you.
These people want to change their schedule during the summer, and if you don't do that year round, if you're not Jason Kuhn, you shouldn't be just pick it up for the summer because that's what you heard in the podcast. You should keep your routine as similar as possible to your day to day, so we're comfortable. You're not overexhausting yourself, and you're not all of a sudden lacking energy and wearing away at the end of the night. I see so many people the last 2 levels of any tournament just see it. They're not
see
paying
it.
attention. They're not picking up a tendency. They're not paying attention to stack size or a showdown. Like, they're
I
just
agree
not
with
focused.
where I pick up, especially No Limit, is the last level of the day. You hear people say, "Oh, it's drinking level now," right? And then I've had a tight image all day, and let's just say I've chipped up to 80 or 90,000. I would say unless I take a bad beat without risking a chip, in that last hour I go from 90 to 140 almost every time, and they don't even know. I'm just talking, shooting the shit with them, and they just, it's tight mic. He has to have it. And like you just said, it's so easy. The best time to exploit people are the last level of the night, last two levels of the night. And the thing is, but in the in the 10K mix games, you're playing so big that it's not as quite as easy to exploit people. But I agree with you 100% that in the no limits, it's really the best time to pick up a lot of chips because most people aren't paying attention. I tell all the young kids, people ask me, I'm my first World Series, or what should I do? And my always advice to them is get on a routine. Do not go out partying during the World Series. Wait till listen, the strip clubs and the bars and the nightclubs are all going to be there after the World Series, okay? But if you go out to the Rhino till 5 a.m, and then you have to be at a tournament at noon, I don't give a shit who you are. No matter how great a shape you're in, it's going to affect you. And it's one of the things that people don't. One thing that is also good, not only just the volume that you play, but you don't party. You're married. You settle down. You don't go out drinking all night. So I'm sure when you were younger you might have, but it's a big. If you want to be successful, you'll probably agree here with me. Is you look at all the top players, or even the top people that are in contention for Player of the Year. I don't think one of them has a drink during the World Series, or even drinks. Is that a fair assessment? Or
I mean, I drink a little bit. Like, I'll drink 1 or 2 days, or maybe like playing the Big 50, I got drunk during one of those days. But like that's how much I wasn't taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like I owe a lot of my success the last couple of years to Frank Casella because I stay at his house. Mm-hmm. And he has a beautiful home, and like almost every night, like probably 4 nights a week, we'll go home, we'll bag chips, we'll hop in the jacuzzi, have 2 beers, talk about the day, talk about politics, talk about whatever, just wind down. Mm-hmm. And that's so relaxing, and then I sleep well, and then I'm ready to go the next day.
Yeah.
It's like, the years where I would stay at Aria Bellagio and finish a bag of tournament, go play cash games till 8 in the morning, or just play to my restart, and be up for 2 days straight, like, my results seriously suffered. Like I
remember that.
Any year I tried to play tournaments in cash, it was just too much on me.
Exactly.
And I still made money, but I didn't make nearly as much as I should have those years. Mm-hmm. And so the last 2 years, I actually haven't played. Maybe 2 or 3 years, I haven't played one-handed cash during the summer. And I know that I could make more money playing cash.
Way more.
But I also love the tournaments. I also love the lack of exposure. Because I have a family, I don't want to expose myself to lose $1 million or $2 million in the summer.
Right.
Which could easily happen if I try to play the biggest games.
Right.
And so because of that, my exposure is always $350, and then I cash for a little bit more like food. After that dealer's choice, I was like, all right, and the 50K, I'm like, I'm free rolling the rest of the summer. I don't give a shit what happens. I'm making at least 100K, and I just was relaxed. And I said, now my goal is Player of the Year.
It's a good feeling.
And that's the thing is. Yeah.
It's a good feeling to cash and make big scores early in the series. The last 2 years I had done that. I was free rolling the whole World Series. And people don't realize it's even though you're probably more well off in poker than most people. Most people are they're playing. This is their time of year to make money. And if things start to go bad, they start to fall apart or whatever. And but you're able to stay focused and do that. I realized that 2 years ago. Even though I've had 3 good World Series in a row, I remember I was doing what you were saying. I would get knocked out of a tournament, run over to Bellagio, play 4 800 or 2-4, 3-6 mix, whatever's going on. And sometimes I played round the clock, and a tournament that I wanted to play, I don't play because I have been all night playing, or I end up playing, grenading it, and it was just too much. And for most of the viewers out there that don't know, I mean, playing cash in tournaments are completely two different animals. I mean, in cash games, you could make just a horrific call or whatever and say, well, that was a bad call, and then just put more money on the table. Where in a tournament, whether it's no limit or even mixed games, once those blinds get up there, you get in a hand, you play bad, it puts a serious dent in your chances of winning that tournament. So I decided, just like you, the last 2 years, zero cash. Not even one hand of cash, and it's definitely helped me do well in the tournaments. And you agree it's very hard to play cash and tournaments. Would you agree during the World Series?
Yeah, I mean, I really think most people should stick to one or the other.
Right. And
it's just the schedule, the style of play, the results. Like cash, you're going to have a lot more big wins and big losses, but tournaments you're going to have small losses and a big win here and there. So it's a total different mindset, because with tournaments you can always get out in one day. In cash, you can be buried enough where you can't, and that really affects a lot of people too much.
Yeah, and I I was talking with Jesse Martin this year, and he's a great all around player, especially in cash games and stuff, and he struggled during the World Series this year. Probably one of the most he struggled in the tournaments. Now, I don't know if that had a lot to do with when he got knocked out, if he was playing a lot of cash, getting stuck, when people don't, I never did ask, but I do know that when you're playing 400, 800 every day, and then you're getting stuck 20, 30, it's so easy to get stuck 20,000 playing 4 and 8. And now you're grinding and you're grinding and you're grinding. And then even with the late reg on the 10Ks where you could, let's just say, show up at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it's still taxing on your – it's so hard mentally. And I'm not saying this happened to Jesse, that's why he had a bad World Series in the tournaments. But it's so hard mentally to literally grind those games, like you're saying, where you're – oh, man, I'm stuck. I lost 30. Oh, I just lost 30 again. Oh, man, I can't win a pot again. And the next thing you know, you're 85,000 loser in 3 days playing 4 and 800. And now you're like, oh, I have to grind for 3 days. And if I don't finish top 3, how am I going to get that money back? And then people don't realize how much mental strength is involved with playing poker, especially playing both cash and tournaments. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's totally true. And, I played a lot with Jesse this summer, and he was on the fantasy team I had a piece of, and I love his game, and I was deep in him. We were final 2 tables in like 3 tournaments together, and he ran awful.
Right.
And, it's so brutal because it messes with your head, because you're just like, I can't win any key pot. His equity was massive in a bunch of tournaments, and he was, the best player, if not the second best player, every time we were deep, and it just shit happens very poorly. And it definitely messes with you, and like he definitely seemed more ornery because he's just he's got a family. You got to make money, and like if you're not making money in the World Series as a poker pro, especially the top guy, you feel like shit. And it definitely fucks with you, and like it was definitely affecting you. And that's why I'm like, you got a week, and you got the rest of the year to think about how you could have played the last week of the World Series, and you saddled up and fucking crushed. And got the results that you wanted. It could have been better, it could have been worse, but you recognize that, and that's the nice thing about tournaments is like you can always get out. Almost every time you play will get you even on the summer or get you winner on the summer, and you just have to keep playing your best game and ignore the results, ignore how much the cards are bad or the dealers are bad or other shit's happening or you're dealing with drama. You just have to focus just on poker.
Would you?
That's where my wife gets the assist for everything with my results is she deals with all the drama, all the business stuff we have going on, the kids, That's tough on her for 2 months.
Yeah.
And I would not have this success without her holding down the fort. So everyone knows to not call me during the summer. My family doesn't bug me. I don't hear about, any parties, any deaths, anything. It's like total radio silence for 2 months. She deals with everything, and they relate to her. And if she thinks I would want to know about it, she tells me. Because she's kind of the filter for all the shit so I can be as focused as possible on poker.
Yeah, and you know what? I remember my girlfriend for almost 7 years, and every year I tell her the same thing. And most of the time, she's gotten really better, and that's she was one of the reasons why I had such a great World Series this year. Is there's been many times I come home and we get in arguments, and I'm like, you have to understand poker by we're 6 years in. I'm like, for 6 weeks, no matter what happens, you just got to keep me in the right mind frame, a positive mind frame. If I come home negative, you have to pull me up. It's very, when you have a partner that's able to do that, it's so important. And it's almost one of the reasons why I thought Daniel was going to have a good World Series like he did. Is he's always been in. Now we know you guys don't get along or whatever, but that's beside the point. But when you get married and you're with in a good relationship, and when they always, how they say happy wife, happy life. Well, during the World Series, it's like you want to make money for the family. You have to keep me straight. Now, you know what I'm saying, on the straight and narrow. Keep the distractions away, all the negativities away, because it's so important to be in a great mindset. If you're in a great mindset, you're a top player, you're going to make money. When people sit there and say, "Oh, I had a horrible World Series," or you will probably agree with me that how many people do you see by week, or let's just go the last 5 years, by week 2 of the World Series, they're crying and bitching how bad they're running or whatever. And I mean, I kind of look at them and I laugh. I'm like, dude, it's like week 2 of the World Series. There's like 6 weeks left. I'm like, if you're bitching already, you got no chance, And you could see right away the players that I'm going to have a big World Series, and now we're all of a sudden a week to even 2 weeks in, and now you're playing with them. They're playing bad. They look like they're tilted, and they are. They've mentally checked out so many times by week 2 of the World Series. I mean, I could tell you a few names over the years, but I don't need to. You know who they are. What do you agree? Like 8? Like, am I overestimating that 8 out of the 10 people that after 2 weeks they mentally check out and then they whine about how bad a World Series they had?
I think it's an issue of so many of them pump themselves up before the summer. Like, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to win a bracelet. I'm going to do this. Like, they have such high-end goals.
Right.
And, you're like, oh, you want to just win, not to win a bracelet. I'm like, no, I know most years I play the World Series, I'm not going to win a bracelet. Yeah, I had some good shots. Yeah. But, all those tournaments, I had multiple hands, or if I lost them, I would have got 30th. I would have never cashed,
Right.
I'm happy with my results because I know that those results add up.
Right.
And I know that, I'm making money, and if I just keep buying in and making good decisions, long-term I can make money. Yeah, I didn't win 2 bracelets like last year, but I didn't win $2 million, but I'm okay with that. I'm content, and I don't put that stress on myself that other people do, that they need to win.
Right.
And the funny thing is, some people have the best first week, they bomb the rest of the summer.
Right.
Because they're so confident. They're like, oh, I'm so great. I'm better than everybody.
Right.
They just convince themselves that they can outplay everybody, and they just start spewing. So it's like such a unique thing that so many people start at the same point skill-wise, and so many of them drop off because of results, whether positive or negative,
right.
Because they just don't. They convince themselves that they're either running better or playing better than they actually are.
Right, and I look at it as like I'll just say as Robert Mizrachi, I'll use as a example. He's one of my good friends. I think he's a great player. He's one of those people that if things go bad early, he checks out, and then he'll and same with his brother, and they'll whine and I'm running so bad or whatever. This year he started the World Series off good, got in a good place, and stayed. Even though he didn't get a bracelet either, I played with him in so many different events where he was playing sharp, playing with focus. And that's after he played like shit at that 10K08 table we were at, and then he ends up getting a real good result. And the next thing you know, he's getting more in the zone, a little bit more confident. And poker is so much about confidence. You know that. And it's very easy to get down. Most people in poker, they just don't seem to understand that you're not going to win every pot, and you're not going to just show up and win a bracelet. And I brought out his name because he had won a bracelet like 3 years in a row, and that was going into like 2 years ago. And then there was last year, or maybe the year before, I think it was last year, I lose track of time, where he started off bad, he was running bad, and now I'm playing in a PLO tournament with him. That was 3 years ago. It's been 3 years now since he won a bracelet after winning it 3 years in a row. And I remember he showed up, I'm betting everybody bracelet bets, blah, 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 blah. I'm not trying to knock him or single him out, but a lot, like you're saying, it's what a lot of people do. They set these goals. And I don't know, what I put on all my video vlogs this year that I was taking is, show up, I get some chips, maybe this is my day, or if I got to a day 3, let's just run good on a day 3, because no matter, you'll agree with me no matter what. I mean, when you're playing limit tournaments, no matter how good you play, I mean, you have to catch cards, you have to make great folds and give yourself a chance. I mean, how many times have you folded a big pot knowing you're beat and left yourself 2 big blinds and then ran it up in a limit tournament? I know you've done that probably as many as I've done it, and you have to.
Yeah, I mean, people are so, 50 is a great example of that. There's so many great players, great cash game players who play such a bad short stack. And, it's not until day 3 or further that you see that. But they're making grave errors. They're overcommitting themselves. They're acting like they have 30 big bets to play with. Mm-hmm. They don't realize they have 5, and they make this marginal play that, might be slightly profitable, but they're now not going to have enough of a stack to play out the really profitable hand that's coming up.
Exactly. God, even though you've played a lot more volume than me, because you come from the online world, it's exactly what I think. And a lot of times, there's equity spots where maybe you're supposed to call, and you tell yourself, well, if I fold here, I can find better spots. And in tournament poker, it's not like cash games. You don't need to always go. At least this is how I think, and this is where I kind of differ. I don't know if you differ a little bit from the GTO ICM guys. Is just because it's a math spot of plus equity doesn't mean you have to take that line. You understand what I'm trying to say? And you could take a different line if you feel like you could get your money in better spots or a different spot. And I do that a lot. I think, even where people just trash Phil Hummey's game, that's what he does a lot. He is fantastic at playing against bad players and making folds that, like, equity-wise aren't the best folds, but then he'll find a better spot, and everybody will be saying, Phil folded this much for this many big blinds. What an idiot. And then all of a sudden you look over and Phil's got 50 big blinds. And is he really that much of an idiot? Because he puts himself in different spots. Now, we all know Phil is full of himself, and he thinks he's about miles better than he is. I bring it up because I did an interview with him last night that I'll be releasing next week or the week after, and we were talking, and I said, by the way, he respects you a lot. He said, we were talking. I said, listen, say what you want about Shaun. He's one of the best 5 all-around tournament players in the world. There's not a doubt about it. And he agreed, top 5 or whatever, because it was funny. I said I don't care what anyone says. I said it's hard to argue that there's a better all-around tournament player in every game beside Shaun Deeb. And of course, his ego. He's like, he's top 5 for sure, but to say he's the best, yeah, that's Phil being Phil. You know what I'm saying? And that the thing is in the poker world, you have that respect. There's a lot of people say, Shaun's the biggest asshole. Shaun's a piece of shit. Shaun's, whatever. Even if you are an asshole, right, or whatever, and you admit it, you say, hey, fuck it, I don't give a shit. I'm an asshole. I tell it like it is. But I say, no matter what you say about Shaun Deeb, you must respect his poker game. He's great at all the games, and there's just not many people that I could say that about. I mean, even Brian Rast. I mean, there used to. Do you remember the days where we would chase Brian Rast in the mixed games around, and he was just awful? I mean, no, is he still one of the top mixed games? I think he's become one of them. I love the way he plays, but there we also have a situation of playing big cash games, and then having to come over to the tournaments and try and do well. And
he's playing tournaments where the big blind, his big bet when he's playing 5 and 10K all summer, is the buy-in to the highest tournament. So
right.
It's tough for him to take it seriously, but if he ever needed to grind, if he ever was somehow short on money, he'd be one of the people I would take, who I wouldn't want to bet against in tournaments, because he can win any tournament. He can, play against the best players. He can play against the worst players. But, that's the thing is there's so many people who could be as good as me at tournaments
right.
who are smart enough to, and year-round they just play cash. So, that's better. Like John Monet could easily be there right with me,
Yeah.
These are Shulman. There's so many names who could easily compete with me.
Oh, absolutely.
If you had to say, if everyone had to play just tournaments, I would not be top 5. But
right.
thankfully there's cash games, so, the top minds of poker don't spend year-round thinking of tournaments. And, with all my online tournament success throughout the years in volume, I know ICM spots and I know final table payouts better than the mixed game crowd. So that's, what helps me. But, I don't doubt that if they tried for, 3 months or 6 months, they'd be as good, if not better than me.
Right.
But thankfully it's not cost effective for them to do it. So I get to play against a lower tier player at the World Series,
right.
At the earlier levels. These guys are max late regging because it's most profitable for them to play cash on day one of a tournament, like Gordo, for example.
Right.
Mercier, all these guys would be there, right there with me, battling every day if they had to. But, they don't do it, so it's nice.
Even Volpe.
Avoid a bunch of guys.
I mean, we know how great Volpe plays every game. He's one of my top 5, and now he once you grinded tournaments a long time and you got a lot of money and you're able to play in the big cash games where you are as good, if not better, than people. It's tough to be a tournament player, and he ended up playing a lot of cash this summer, and then he also ended up playing a lot of tournaments towards the end of the year. But like we've talked about already, it's just not easy to do when you're playing nosebleed cash games. And even John Monet, right? I originally texted him the day before the World Series. I said, "Are you going to be playing a lot of tournaments?" Because I was going to draft him on my, I didn't play 25K draft, but I did, Mark Gregorich's 2.5 and. I think one in Baker's fantasy, and I said, he says, I'm going to play at least half the 10Ks, and that's about it. And all of a sudden, I'm looking, and he's playing every tournament. I'm like, I thought you weren't going to be playing any tournaments. He's like, well, they beat me for $250,000 for the 4th consecutive day, and I've had enough. Well, there you go. There's our point in what we've been talking about is – here, when you're playing, we're talking a lot, 250,000. Wow, who loses to, these guys are playing 3,600. You know what I mean? And it's not. It's kind of like when you're playing 3,600. 25,000 is nothing. You know what I'm saying? And when you go and you lose, when you start off and you're playing these guys and you're losing like that, now you got to grind in a tournament. It's just that he had very poor results in tournaments this year, and that had a lot to do with it. I mean, it's just, you get stuck $1 million playing cash games, and now you're jumping in a tournament where 400,000 up top, and all of a sudden you play for 2.5 days and you finish 13th and get 14,000 and you profited 4,000. That's a tough blow. You know what I'm saying? You're like, you're deep in a tournament. You pick up 4,000, but you've lost $1 million over the last 4 days. What are you guys laughing about over there?
Sean's taking a long piss in the background.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that's my boy Shaun. Yeah, you guys are funny. Sean's taking a nice piss, and I'm starting to laugh. I'm trying to.
Oh, I was filling up some water.
That's pretty funny.
Going.
Yeah, he's filling up the water. Like, man, he keeps going and going, man. This is a hell of a long time.
I usually when I have an interview where I know it's going to go long, I usually have a cup of water waiting with me.
Yeah.
This time I didn't, so I was like, all right, getting a little dry, so let me go get some water.
Oh, yeah. Can you grab me?
And I'd be nice enough to at least mute the phone if I was going pee. Come on, guys.
I know.
I've done this before.
That's pretty funny. So, like I said, you had a great World Series. You are in position for a possible unprecedented Player of the Year in back-to-back years, which I think would be, I know it would be an achievement that is people will talk about for a long time. So I know you really want it. You plan on going out to WSOP Europe. I know that.
Yeah.
And I was not going to go, but they added those 2 8 games in there, and now I'm on the fence, maybe 50-50 of going. That makes just such a big difference.
That really affects my Player of the Year equity because now Huey and Dan Zach are going to go most likely. Because Dan Zach's a great player, Huey's also a great player.
Right.
But they enjoy mixed more than No Limit. They're both great at No Limit.
Right.
But that's not the game they prefer.
Right.
And so now it's going to make it a 5-horse race out there. So it hurts my chance of going back-to-back a lot more.
Wow.
But,
See, I was thinking opposite. I was thinking it helped you out a lot more. But now, the more I think about it, you're right. If Huey and Dan Zach go, but who's the top 5 right now? You got...
It's Robert Campbell first, who's going to go, but he wasn't going to play the big No Limit.
Right.
It's me. And I think I'm probably going to put out a tweet and actually sell for some of the higher binds, the 25K short deck, 25K No Limit, and the 100K No Limit. And if I get some time away from kids, I'm going to study short deck the best I can.
Right.
Before I go there, because that's one of the games I have the least amount of experience in, and the equities are very different. It's a unique structured game, which for anyone who knows me, or doesn't know me that well, whenever a new game comes out, I usually tend to be one of the better people, whether it was open phase, whether it's, a goofy new game that we invent. And that's kind of always been my MO is to new games that come out, I become very good at very fast.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the side effects of having a family is, when short deck became popular, I would have loved to, go play the big short deck games and the big short deck tournaments before anyone else has, because the first day I think I would, learn at a faster rate than almost anybody. Mm-hmm. So if I played the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months it was popular in tournaments, mm-hmm. I think I, would be levels ahead of everybody. Right. But, the curve passed me because I wasn't able to put in the volume like I usually do. So that's kind of going to be my focus for the next month or two is to really study short deck, figure it out, find a place to play some short deck cash, somewhere online, and go from there.
Do you think short deck No Limit is going to take on and become popular? I think it is. Most people I talk to say no. The reason why
I'm going to give you a two-way answer.
Okay.
I think it'll be very popular for cash. I think it'll be very unpopular for tournaments.
Okay.
Once people actually realize the equities on the bubble, the big stack can just go all in dark every hand and no one can call.
Right.
And they pick up too many chips and too many antes. So because no one can call, it's kind of like the old school sitting goes. The chip leader can just shove every hand and no one calls, and they just win the tournament 95% of the time,
right,
unless someone wakes up with aces 3 times in a row.
Right.
So because of that once people at the big stack start realizing how to wield the big stack in that game, mm-hmm. in a tournament, people are going to realize what a bad tournament game is. It's just like No Limit Omaha, No Limit 08. If you're all 20 blinds effective and it's fold you in the cutoff and you have, some 4 shit cards, right, you can shove because they just can't call enough. And when they do call, you still have 35 to 40% equity.
Yeah, well, yeah,
and
they
can't call with 60% equity.
They can't
because,
call.
They're going to bust too often.
Yeah, and the thing is, they can't call. I mean, even when you move in, and that's a good point, is most people who move in No Limit 08 is they have aces, right? And if somebody's moving in front of you, if they're raise all in, right? If you don't think they have aces, or raise, call, and then you move all in. The raise with an ace, deuce, or whatever, and call, and now all of a sudden you just ship it. I mean, is somebody really, they have to call an all in with a piece of shit ace deuce and they think you have aces. So it's very tough to call within No Limit 08 if in certain situations, which is why I think it's a terrible cash game. It might be a better tournament game, but I don't know. We've never seen it. So I definitely agree with what you're saying there. The short deck, I didn't know how it was going to be because I just figured you're going to see there's going to be a lot more hands, a lot more played post flop, because you have so many more hands to play, and it would be more of an interesting tournament game to watch on TV. And but I have not played it, so I have no idea. And you're saying no, it wouldn't.
Yeah, I do think you're right about this. I think that's a great game for TV because there's going to be more action, more hands. There's going to be more multi-way pots, But it's so confusing math for people. And, I think there's a couple intricacies of the game where it has a lot of Omaha-esque things where, you want to be the first person to call an all-in with ace or kings or ace-king suited, and the third guy all-in wants to have jack-10 suit or 9-10 suit.
Right.
It's so goofy that, you don't want to be the third guy all-in with aces because, your equity's not that good against, two suited connectors.
No. In the short, that's what I was thinking. Exactly. It's just they were taught. There's Phil was telling me about this tournament coming out where that he invested a little bit of money in, where there's going to be 100,000 people in a tournament, and each player has to play one of the first two hands dealt. Okay, so that takes 2 minutes. Now you're down to 10,000 players. Then you have to play one of the onto the next round to the first two hands dealt. Now you're down to 1,000. Anyway, the tournament's over in 12 minutes, and it's a company whatever where they're going to be giving away free rolls, and people who are advertised real big with a certain event. If you win that thing, you'll get free rolls into big money tournaments, whatever. And I thought it was somewhat of a good idea, but I said, but there's no poker in that. That's just it's an all-in or fold. You're flipping to get a seat, which is basically a lottery, which is great for 99% of the people, but not great for you and I and other top guys. Right, and so I'm like, well, how's that going to work, and how good can that be for poker? So if you have to play one of the first two hands, let's just say the first hand or even the second hand, you pick up two aces, and you're all in. Well, there's six other people that have to go all in with you there, and equity wise, you got 24% against seven other players with two aces, probably. Maybe less. How many times you ever won with two aces in a 7-way action pot? Not often, right? So that in itself is pretty interesting. Flash, be quiet, you old man. My cat, 18 years old, he runs around like he's a kitten and he wants attention all the time. Shh.
I'm sure your girlfriend could say the same thing about you.
Oh,
reading my mind. Exactly what I was thinking.
You had to open up the can of worms while she's over here listening and everything. So very few people. I'm going to ask one more thing, and then we'll go to the questions that we had some people go on. I have said this many times. Very few people, you could probably count them on one hand, maybe two hands at the most, started off in the online world. Flash, shut up. Started off in the online world and are able to make an adjustment to cash games and the live world. To me, the games are completely different. What was your adjustment? What do you feel is so different in the adjustments you had to make going from an online grinder to a cash game grinder or to a live game grinder?
The biggest adjustment that was easy to me was actually knowing who people were. I know if this is a 6-year-old guy with a wife and grandkids, or some 22-year-old German, Right. Online, it was just a name and a location. You had no idea about age, how they dress. There's so much information that you see when you join a table. You're like, how do they move their chips? All these simple things that you don't even think about now because you've been playing for so many years. But right. I was very good at adjusting that, and I'm very friendly, and I chat with people. So this is your first tournament you ever played. Oh, you play here. This is who you're friends with. Mm-hmm. I'm always paying attention to who they talk to on break. In the closer, this kid who I didn't know anything about the final table, he stood there talking to Sergio Adio, whatever, Adio, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was one of the best players in the world. So I'm like, he's friends with him. All right, I'm going to give him credit, right. for being this level of play just because he's talking to him. I know he doesn't associate with this kid's too young just to be a fish.
Right.
So he clearly has to be a great player.
Right.
And, that's actually the guy who I lost the flip to is because I played my hand versus him knowing who he's friends with and knowing he'd play X number of hands probably this way in the situation.
Right.
And, you know, that was something that was easy for me because of, like, I'm talkative, sociable, you know, I'm not, you know, silent kid. But I think a lot of people struggled because a lot of the online crowd were antisocial, you know, part autistic, you know, and it's not their fault. They're savants at what they do, but they can't associate with people and communicate well and get that extra information. Like, I could tell you 100 hands I played this summer where someone made a comment or showed a fold, and I immediately, you know, took advantage of that 2 hands later because I was able to extrapolate that information that they gave away, that they're willing to raise fold that hand to this because they just, like, they would only play aces like that. So therefore, I'm going to play my bluffs like that and make them fold.
Right. And this is one of the problems, and I try and tell Helmuth all the time. You know, we're good friends. I'm like, Phil, you love to raise, get 3-bet, and then show some big lay down to them. I'm like, that's the absolute worst thing you could ever do. The only time you want to show cards is when you have it. You know, you don't want to show big. I'll never, ever show a big fold, you know. And you always want them to think, you know, put it in their mind, oh, Mike's tight. Every time he shows a hand, he has it. That's where you want to be. That's going to allow you to exploit them later on. Where, you know, if you're showing people big folds, they're going to fucking exploit you, you know? And I'm not, you know, luckily Phil doesn't listen to all my podcasts, so he'll never hear this. And there's a lot of times, listen, me and Phil talk a lot. I've helped him out a lot in the mixed games because he's helped me out a lot when things have been bad for me, and not many people have. And I respect him for that. And people don't understand Phil. He's deep down inside, he's a good-hearted person. He cares, you know.
He's one of the best people to be friends with in poker. And, absolutely. You know, my wife was lucky to meet him early on in our relationship, and Phil said great things about me. And we had we referenced so many Phil Hellmuth quotes and so many Phil Hellmuth lines every single month of our marriage. Like, he's an integral part of why we're together. And, you know, and he's always been, you know, he's always there. Like, you know, and I know, we can call him at any point and talk to him for an hour about anything on our mind, and he'll give you his opinion, and his opinion's always, like, well thought out. He's a very intelligent person. Right. And, you know, obviously he's an emotional person, but all of us are. You can't be a great poker player and not be emotional, because emotions drive you to work harder, to grind harder, and to, you know, make good decisions. Like, because if you're emotionless, you're just going to fucking say, fuck it, and don't care, and flick it in all the time. But if you actually care about each and every chip and each and every decision, you're going to put so much more effort and make so many better plays because, you know, you're giving it 110%. Right.
And that, you know, that's what Phil does, and that's what you do. That's what I do. That's what Daniel does. That's what when Mercier was playing tournaments and Volpe playing tournaments, that's what they do. And you know, listen, when you get, and another reason I respect you so much is once you develop and get yourself a good bankroll, and even though you have 2 kids and a wife, you know, and you always are out there working hard, but once, you know, once people get, you know, a couple $1 million or whatever, and they're playing bigger cash games, it's so easy to deviate from what got you there. Like, what made you all the money, and how good are you in certain tournaments? And so many people, once they get pumped up, whatever, they start to bleed more over to the bigger cash games, which is probably the right thing to do. But as like we talked about, you know, it's not easy to play cash all day and night and then come and play tournaments. And you're 100%. Then even the people you named, they're just they're great players. And you're right. If John, there's certain people in the poker world, and I've said this many times, and I have no problem saying it. There's times in my life, pre-2006, no matter what card room I walked into, whoever I played against, I thought I was the best player, and then I'd put certain people above me. I would put, like, Johnny World, David Oppenheim, even before David Benjamin blew all his money into the pit and owed the whole world, and then became somebody that just leeches and gets new backers all the time. But he used to be a absolutely fantastic poker player, but he had a leak. You know, he'd get stuck, he'd go in the pit, and the next thing you know, he doesn't understand why he's losing. It's such a interesting dynamic of who the best players are. Like you said earlier, it's such a misconception of who the best players are. It's the fucking joke, you know. And
there's also like so much to be said of like so many names you name. If they're ever at your tournament in day 3, you should be fucking scared. But if they're at your table day 1, you know, they're not taking it that seriously. You know, I've always had the thing when it comes to poker is online I played the small stakes and the high stakes every single day.
Right. So
I don't mind grinding. Like I don't see it as an insult. I respect people who drop down in stakes. And, you know, just because I'm well off, I don't think I'm above, you know, playing the $500 no limits, the $1,500 mix. I'm going to play every buy-in available because I know what my equity is. And I know that, you know, I'm going to make money. Yeah, you know, it sucks, you know, to win a tournament that's only 100K up top or 40K or 12K. You know what I mean? Because you're like, shit, I should have done this when it was 1.5 up top. But, you know, throughout the years, I went so long without a massive score in poker. You know, I grinded so many, like, 50 to 70K scores, which, you know, some people listening say, it's such a massive score, but, like, the stakes I was playing, I played every 5K and 10K and 25K live for years. And I was down probably $1 million or $2 million in live tournaments, and I was still confident I was profitable because I knew I could beat these games. I knew that every time I was at a final table, you know, shit would go bad, but I didn't let it fuck with me to just give up on tournaments. I stuck with it, and, you know, I've put up consistent year after year results because of that, because I knew that I was better than my results were.
Right.
And I was, you know, I didn't let it affect me. I didn't say like, I run so bad. Like I, you know, you've known me for years. How often am I sitting there complaining about how bad I run?
Never.
And, you know,
Never.
and I always said like, there's so many times in my career that I should have went broke. And I said like, I've run further above expectation than almost anyone when you look time and time again, because I was a DJ when I was, you know, 18, 19, 20. I did do a bunch of dumb shit, and I did just waste my money, you know. Now I've matured and I've gotten better with that, but, you know, I at least was aware that I was doing bad things then. And, you know, I was aware of leaks, and so many people are not aware of them, and they just convince themselves it's something else.
Correct. And, you know, I could kind of relate what you just said is, you know, I grinded my whole life. Let's say I started in 96 through 2005, where me and a handful of people were just so much, especially even in tournaments, were so much farther way in front of everybody else that it was easy to just show up and make money. And once you realize that, hey, people have gotten good, you need to watch people's tendencies. But once poker became tougher, you have to respect your opponents. And one of the biggest things I had for a long time is, like what you're kind of relating to, is I would walk in there and, you know, I'm the best, I'm this, and all of a sudden you start losing, and poker will humble anybody. And if you have not been humbled yet in poker, you will. And if you get humbled and you don't make adjustments and, let's just say, build off of it, you know, what's the difference of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over? Now, unfortunately for me, I did that way too long because I had worked so hard to get myself involved with Full Tilt. You know, poker didn't just build overnight. It started off with like 25 of us playing a World Poker Tour event. You know, and we had to go from tournament to place, and we worked hard to build that. That's why it hurt so bad what happened with the Full Tilt, because so many of us put in so many hours to build the company to put us in position where we don't have to grind every day. And when bad things happen with that, and I realized that I had to go back to playing poker full time, it was a shock to my system. It's like, well, what the fuck am I got to go back and start grinding every day? And I'm not going to lie, it took me probably at least a year after Black Friday to come to the realization that there's no more Full Tilt money. You got to start over, and it's a shock to your system when you work so hard to never have to work again. And like we talk about, you doing stupid things when you were younger. Well, I did stupid things in the early 2000s, but worked really hard in poker. And now all of a sudden I find myself where I got to go back grinding every day, and it was a shock to my system, and it was hard. I've made that adjustment now. I've learned from my mistakes. I've gone broke 9 times. People like to laugh at me and say, "Come on, Mike, only 9." But you know, and the misconception.
Well, some of the times you were negative, had a big score, and were still negative, so that only counts as 1.
Yeah.
That's why they're confused.
Well, people don't seem to understand. Like, I have no problems of admitting. Even when I was making big money in Full Tilt, I never had money because I knew I had that income. I had a lot of other endorsement incomes. So I spooed in the sports. I spooed in a lot of times, even if I didn't play 4 and 800, if there was a 2-400 game going, it was like playing so small. I'd dust off 20,000 and play bad. You know what I'm saying? And that happened to me. And unfortunately, it took a lot longer to realize. Guess what? The Full Tilt's not coming back. The only way you're going to get back on your feet is working. And now and then it sucked when I got sick because that I was in pain every day for 4 years, and you could tell. You've seen me many a times. The difference between, even though I had 2 great World Series in a row, the difference this year going to last year and the year before, how much I was able to move, get up out of the chair, come to your table, talk to you.
Yeah, you didn't have the fatigue that you had.
Exactly. And being able to play where you're not just in pain every day is, I don't even know. It was like, listen, I'm still going to have I'm stuck with this little bit of pain the rest of my life, no matter what. But to have like 85% relief from where I was for the last 4 years allowed me to just stay in that positive mindset where I'm like, I'm not in pain. I know I'm playing good. Where before it was even though I did it the last 2 years, before it was like, the first 2 years after my operation was like, oh man, I'm in so much pain. And then mentally I'd break down, miss play hands. And that's why you'd find myself going to day 2s and not making it through day 2s. And then the next thing you know, when I figured it out 2 years ago, I was like, stop, you have to fight through the pain. And so it was a lot harder for me fighting through the pain and showing up at the World Series every day than it was this year. And that's why even when you only heard one negative thing out of me this year, and that was going into the last week of the World Series, and you lifted me up, and I've credited you to it. You said, Mike, stud 8 or better tomorrow. It's one of your best events. You're going to do good there. You got the main event, and you got the horse tournament. You got other tournaments coming up. It's not over yet. And you know what? I went to sleep that night. I said, Shaun's right. I go, don't get down. It's been tough, and it pays off. It paid off, and that is the toughest thing that we have to at the World Series is getting up every day when things go bad, and knowing that you have to go do it again.
The Mouthpiece.
I hope you enjoyed our show today with a great interview with Shaun Deeb. Thanks for listening to Part 1, and join us tomorrow for Part 2 of The Mouthpiece.
The Mouthpiece.